Okay. Thank you, everybody, for being here today at the Government Ops Committee of the Athens-Clarke County Government. We're here today to continue our discussion about the Police Oversight Board. I feel like we're making some good direction on this. Attorney Drake has prepared a draft ordinance for us to look at, and we're going to jump right into that today. I do think, however, there may be some minutes for us to approve. Thank you, Josh, for putting that up. So if I can get a motion to approve the Thursday, August 12th meeting minutes.
So moved.
Okay, a second. Okay. Thank you, Patrick and Melissa, for seconding. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And what we're going to do today, Josh, if you don't mind putting that back up real quick, just so we can show it to everybody one more time, and we can start our discussion. What we're going to do today is review the draft ordinance that Attorney Drake has put up, and I know Commissioner Denson, I know you sent something here just a little while ago that I know you'd like to make some points on, and we can discuss that as well. So I'm hoping today, it looks like we're going to review these recommendations. I was hoping that we might get through this and pass something along. But I know we've got a lot to think about because this is an important topic, and we want to get something for the community and that's well thought out and prepared. So I certainly don't want to rush anything, but I also want us to be mindful of the items for future consideration that are coming up, and I'd like for us to at some point start the discussion on the parklet program, because I know that. I think we've got to the end of the year to come up with something on that. So how time just flies. So thank you, Josh. If we want to go back to the screen, Attorney Drake, do you want to take it?
Yes, I'm glad to. First, let me say I appreciate the opportunity to be with the committee. Normally, Sherry Hines handles this and does an excellent job, but she's on vacation this week. And so actually, I want to also say that Sherry actually prepared this draft language, these provisions. And this is actually not a complete ordinance. It is an ordinance that addresses, it's a very substantial portion, but I will say too that most of this I think Sherry indicated that she drew from the City of Atlanta ordinance. City of Atlanta has a very robust police civilian oversight program, and so a lot of this language is she took from there. I will say that she it indicated she welcomes more guidance from this body as to what they would like to see, and felt like this was just merely a jumping off point, and so there we are. So the provisions of the draft ordinance relate primarily to the following discussion points. One is criteria for establishing the oversight board, and two is the duties of the oversight board. And there was some questions that we'll go through that Sherry had identified for the GOC members to consider in working through this. So the first section deals with the establishment of the Police Civilian Oversight Board, and I guess that I would allow us, open it up for us to talk about that section, and I will take any comments you have down and pass those on to Sherry to see as we work towards the final product. Does that sound like a good way to work through this section by section, Chairman Hammond?
That works for me. That works for everybody else.
All right. So
and if anybody has any questions, Attorney Drake, they can just jump on them. They don't need to wait.
Yes.
So.
Yes. So I'll let the board. You've had copies of it. Let you talk about the first section, which deals with the overall establishment of the section that deals with establishment of what we call the Athens-Clarke County Police Civilian Oversight Board.
Okay.
Jared, I did have a question on this one because I reviewed the City of Atlanta's one, and on the bottom of A here, or let me see, no, for B, it says review, evaluate, make recommendations, yada yada yada, of any law enforcement unit within Athens-Clarke County. So I assume that that's definitely for Athens-Clarke County Police Department and Department of Corrections. I was unsure though if that would include the Sheriff's Department. And also, I was unsure if that language there was so broad that it possibly included entities that we don't have oversight over, such as like the UGA Police Department.
Yeah. Well, I can speak to the first. I do think it's any local law enforcement unit. I think that could have. When I was reading this too, and I got to thinking about whether I feel like we could make this applicable to the sheriff's department, and we'd only be reviewing, evaluating, making recommendations. I would like to, even though it's constitutional officer, I want to confirm that. With respect, though, I can tell you certainly we can make our Department of Corrections subject to that. If you mean like the Athens-Clarke County, our detention center, I don't think we could do that to state entities, though, because we don't have that authority. So we could not, this would not in any way allow us to have the purview over the University of Georgia Police, or if there's a state Department of Corrections institution here, if that's what you're talking about. But I think we should clarify that. I agree, because that is kind of broad, Commissioner. So I'm sorry I didn't answer your questions completely, but I think I answered partly. I don't think we can't make state entities or UGA police subject to this, but to the extent they're our Athens-Clarke County Unified Government Facilities, I think entities we can, and I feel like we can do that with the sheriff. I want to make absolutely sure, because of the nature of him being a constitutional officer. Interestingly, I would say, did this mirror the City of Atlanta's language exactly? I know some things she tweaked a little bit by what she thought y'all wanted, but do you recall, Commissioner?
I know that there was some broad language around that also, and that I know for a fact that the City of Atlanta one does include their Department of Corrections, at least.
Yeah, I think we definitely can do that. Yeah.
I didn't see any reference to the sheriff. I don't believe so. That was my biggest question, was the sheriff department.
And I'll get some clarification on that for you.
Okay. Thank you.
I think I had your Davenport's hand up. Then Melissa, I'm sorry. I don't know who was first.
No, I just wanted to see if my colleagues would be okay with just changing the language to specify police department and possibly Department of Corrections.
I think that's appropriate to specify the department so there's no ambiguity.
I agree with that.
Okay.
I have a couple insights. So this ordinance proposed by the Attorney's Office doesn't mention staffing or the auditor monitor as recommended by the task force. And I can see how it would be appropriate to have a separate ordinance for that position. I mean, ideally, I would like to see us appoint this oversight board and have them come up with the duties and the specifics of that staff person. But I think that charge would have to be baked into this ordinance to assure that would happen.
I would agree with that, Commissioner. I think we'd have to make it subject to final approval by the commission. We probably want to reserve that, but I think that would be appropriate, what you're talking about, adding that charge, if that be the pleasure of the.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to bake it into this charge. This 1AB add C. The board's initial duty will to be determine staffing and auditor monitor. And I mean, also a board like this, typically their first charge is to come up with their own policies and procedures. I know when I was on the Cultural Affairs Commission, when it first got started, we spent a whole year or two just coming up with a mission statement and policies and procedures. And, that body a few years down the line then came up with staffing protocols.
Well, I can say I talked to Commissioner Hamby, Josh and I did before the meeting, and he indicated that he kind of wanted to get some. I don't want to. We talked about looking at these two areas today. We thought we'd have that be enough to get it started, and for this committee to decide how it wanted to move forward with respect to the other part, which is what you just referenced.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel comfortable moving forward and passing this ordinance as written unless it has some clear reference to this body coming up with the details for an auditor monitor.
And there's really two options. We could take a stab at something like that with this board's guidance, this committee's guidance, or we could take the approach that you just said, Commissioner.
And just let me piggyback on.
I would rather.
And I'll say,
Mike, can I say something real quick? Sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
I hear what Commissioner Link is saying. I guess how I envision this happening would be create the oversight board and then have this body with some input from the oversight board perhaps think about and deliberate over the creation of the auditor monitor position and what those duties might entail to possibly staff that position in the new year and around the new budget cycle.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
that's
I think regardless, the commission would have to approve that position, whatever the recommendations are, whatever they come up with. But I think it should be this body, this oversight body, that actually comes up with the details of that position.
Yes. Well, but then I wanted to come back. I'd rather it come back to the GOC, because then the GOC needs to make the recommendation to the full commission.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, procedurally, if that's the way it goes, I just don't want to see it drag out any longer than it needs to. And I feel like a citizen committee with folks that have specific interest in this topic could work more smoothly and quickly to get this whole thing up and running.
Well, go ahead, Commissioner Hamby. I kind of interrupted you. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, I think you captured the thoughts, as did Melissa. Commissioner Denson.
Thank you, Chair. And to some of Commissioner Link's concerns, there is, we'll get down to the section on organization, rules, and consultations that does talk about the creation of the bylaws and rules and regulations that the board will run by. And then the document that I sent out, I did add a couple of sentences that again pulled from the Atlanta board, because they have a similar part in there. But the Atlanta board does say specifically that they will be given the ability to create an executive director position, and that part is baked into the ordinance under the organizational rules and structure. And so, I mean, I can wait till we get down there, but I do have 2 sentences that would kind of at least formalize, not spell out exactly what it's going to do and how it's going to work, but we'll formalize that this committee will be getting the support of an auditor monitor staff person. So.
Okay, so I think, well, let's go through the rest and I get final guidance at the end. I understand what I think I'm hearing. Commissioner Hamby, do you want to summarize what I think I'm hearing?
Like I'm hearing, we need a C here.
Yes.
That captures what
Commissioner Link said.
Commissioner Link said, but and Denson and Edwards, but also Commissioner Edwards, I think, is correct that something we need the final.
Come back to GOC for final approval, and then it'll go through the process.
I don't mind turning the work over to the Citizens Committee, certainly, but whatever changes however Melissa said it, it would need to come back for us for final approval, or to the full Mayor Commission.
Well, and I would say, I think because of the significance of this piece of legislation and the importance of it, it needs to have review by this committee. Because sometimes citizens group, they won't have the same guidance that you have in the benefit of the attorney's office, and there may be things that are with the best of good intentions, but don't take into account certain things this body might need to at least consider.
Right.
So I think that's a good idea, having it come back to GOC.
Well, and
if that's the route you go, yeah.
And I think so too. And I know I keep bringing this up, but I still keep going to the fact that, hopefully if we go this direction, the Citizens Committee will take into account the small number of caseloads that we've seen. So, that's something to think about. So I know we need some sort of staff person at this level, but the duties, I guess, can be determined with Section C when we get a look at that. Does that make any sense?
Yes, it does. And so going on through, I will piggyback off what I understand that charge, and off what Commissioner Denson's under her comment Sherry had. Atlanta's task force includes corrections, so that's an option. And she indicates it also include the sheriff's department as well. I want to make sure that's correct. But so So that was a comment Sherry had. If we're able to include the sheriff's department, is that something we want to do at this point? They don't do as much law enforcement operations as because of the nature of that sheriff's department, you know. But
I think it might be worthwhile to look at the sheriffs. You know, some stuff happens in the jail, certainly.
Yep. Okay.
Commissioner Gamby.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You know, we got this in our email at 4 p.m. and I know I was at work. I know Commissioner Denson had some revisions too. I mean, would it be in order for us to just recess for like 5 minutes so I can read this thing? I'm having trouble reading and taking in what Attorney Drake is saying at the same time. I can't really focus and listen to my colleagues having not read this document.
I don't mind doing that if the board wants to do that.
Is that okay with everybody? Can we recess for 5 minutes just so I can really digest this thing and participate in this discussion?
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
I'll be honest with you. I have not had a chance to read it either, so I can take a look at it real quick.
Are we talking about reading Commissioner Denson's or Commissioner or Attorney Drake's memo? Which one?
I'm going to do both. Yeah.
Okay.
Just to note, I did get mine out much earlier than that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe. Oh, I thought I saw it at 4. Maybe.
I think that was Commissioner Denson's.
Oh, okay. Okay. Sorry about that, Attorney Drake.
No.
I just overlooked it in my inbox then. That's not.
And just a heads up, we got a hard stop at 6 because the planning commission. And I know
Okay.
I
some
have to
folks
do
got to
that.
be there.
That's my responsibility as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. All right. All right. Okay. So how do we recess? What do we do here?
Just everybody take 5, come back at 5:30 and be ready to go, and we'll got to get out of here by 6, evidently, according to Josh, so, which is always.
Okay. Thanks.
Being Oversight Board relates to the jurisdiction of the board. And then the next section broadly defines a lot of terms that are would be applicable within the within this ordinance. The powers and duties of the Police Civilian Oversight Board is probably the most significant important section of this proposed ordinance provision or provision of ordinances. And it sets forth what the police, basically the duties and powers of the Police Civilian Oversight Board will be. And then finally, then we get into issues regarding quorum and the number of members of the Police Civilian Oversight Board, and membership and terms of service, organizational rules, and like was mentioned earlier, the Police Civilian Oversight Board will hold an organization meeting and can adopt bylaws, rules, and regulations that are deemed necessary or convenient to conduct the affairs of that board. And then it talks about election of officers, requiring some training for the Police Civilian Oversight Board members to allow them to do their job better. And then the composition of the board, how many members this body wants to have on there. Procedure for cleaning vacancies, procedure for filling vacancies is addressed, and then the complaint procedure is the last section, which is also very important.
Attorney Drake.
That's a very broad overview, but I mean, it's better if I get specific questions. So if are there specific issues this committee would like to take up related to any of that guidance they want to give myself?
Could you maybe give just a little bit deeper summation of the powers in this board? And,
sure.
And where you do
all right. Well, I will say again that I think a lot of this largely Sherry took from the City of Atlanta's model because of the success that model's had. And if you want to go on their website, that board actually has a website. Now, obviously, the City of Atlanta is much, much larger than they are, but they have a very robust program. They actually have all the reports that they've done and reviewed of different matters on there for you to look at. It's very impressive. That board has some things that this board, they actually go out and do outreach in the community and things. And those are things down the line we might want to consider. But I mean, again, there's always going to be budgetary issues. You always consider about how much money you want to use to fund this and what you want it to use to be. But so, first duty is Police Civilian Oversight Board. I'm going to say the board shall advise the Mayor and Commission and Chief Police on policies and actions of the Athens-Clarke County Police Department with the purpose of improving the ability of police personnel to carry out their duties and to improve the relationship between the police department and the community. Shall have the power to review closed police investigations and make recommendations as necessary. Police Civilian Oversight Board shall have full discretion to select appropriate individual incidents to review and broader issues to study that may be of concern to the community, the police department and or the mayor and commission. Provided, however, the Police Civilian Oversight Board shall, to the best extent possible, minimize duplication of effort between the board and any other existing agencies that have jurisdiction over the same matter. Has language that says the mayor and commission, mayor's office, chief police shall ensure all agencies cooperate to the greatest extent possible in the performance of their respective duties, activities, studies, and operations. Sherry had a comment, while this body cannot demand the chief police and the manager take certain actions, this language is from Atlanta's board, the Atlanta board's ordinance, and I think it speaks to the level of cooperation that all parties are hoping to achieve when possible. Police Civilian Oversight Board number 4 may initiate studies upon the request to the board by any member of the public or police department or at the board's own discretion. The Police Civilian Oversight Board may review specific complaints or instances of misconduct against individual police officers, including those involving language related to race, ethnicity, religion, gender, sexual orientation, or disability. The Police Civilian Oversight Board, at its discretion, may make specific recommendations at any time and shall issue a public report summarizing its activities and recommendations not less than once a year to the mayor and commission, the chief police, the mayor's office. The Police Civilian Oversight Board shall make copies of the report available to the public. One comment Sherry had here was, would the GOC prefer more stringent or frequent reporting requirements? No finding or recommendation of the board shall be based solely upon an unsworn complaint or statement, nor shall prior unsubstantiated, unfounded, withdrawn complaints be the sole basis for any such finding or recommendation. The board shall acknowledge receipt of complaints filed by individuals alleging police officer misconduct within 10 business days of receiving any such complaint. Such response will indicate whether in the exercise of its discretion, the board shall study the allegations made, not study them, or request additional information to enable the board to make a decision on its options. The board shall have the responsibility of informing the public about the board and its duties and shall develop and administer an ongoing program for the education of the public regarding the provisions of this chapter. The board members shall participate in a minimum of 3 community. She did lead this. The board shall participate in a minimum of 3 community outreach activities each calendar year. Failure to do so may result in said member being recommended for removal from the board for neglected duty. It contemplates a staff person maintaining a record of board members' attendance at community outreach activities. I guess I wasn't sure where I wasn't sure about the point of that provision, but it's in there. I guess it's to try and make them be seen and accessible in the community, but it's a lot. It might be a lot to ask for some of the board members. Some might hinder participation. I don't know. That's definitely not something you have to have in there if you don't want it. The board shall have the power to recommend that the chief police take certain actions, may recommend general reforms, such as changes in training, changes in preservation of records, changes in counseling available officers, or specific actions directed at individual officers, including but not limited to hiring, firing, promotion, demotion, punishment, or commendation. Provided, however, the chief police and the manager shall retain full and ultimate authority, power, discretion, management prerogatives, and responsibility to set disciplinary policies or take other lawful actions they deem appropriate relative to the police department and under the provisions of the Code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia. And this is reflective of our charter and provisions of the manager being a strong manager of form of government. Provided further that nothing is said shall be construed to limit the rights of members of the public police department with respect to disciplinary action. Provided further that nothing in this section shall be construed to limit the rights of members of the police department with respect to disciplinary action, including not limited to the right to notice in a hearing which may be established by any provision of law or otherwise. And what this is talking about is, our employees have rights under the personnel system to only be in fired with cause. So, they're going to continue to have those rights that they're otherwise entitled to, regardless of the actions of this board. And that's going before administrative hearing officer. And if they choose, if there's a disciplinary action where it results in adverse action toward their employment, the chief shall not accept the recommendation from police civilian oversight board that shall punish the same officer more than once for the same act or omission that constitutes misconduct for which money. The police civilian oversight board and its members shall not make public any confidential police document or information derived from any such confidential police document. The findings of the police civilian oversight board as they may relate to conclusions drawn from interviews, study, and review of documents shall remain confidential until the board officially releases such findings, except that all records of the police civilian oversight board are subject to requirements of the Georgia Open Records Act. Any findings and conclusions of the board will be by majority vote, and said vote should be conducted in public. Said findings will be provided to the mayor, commission, the manager, and chief police and appear to 3 business days from the date of vote. So that's the duties that we had set forth. Commissioner.
Thank you, Judge.
Yeah. I have a quick question, Judd, on number 11. How do we ensure that there is that confidentiality?
Well, I think it would be like I was thinking any other investigation. When an investigation is going on, the records are public until 10 days after or private until 10 days after the investigation is completed, is what it's talking about. So this is a board, and it would be just like an investigation of the commission. When y'all are doing investigations, the matters are confidential until 10 days after the investigation is completed, just under the authority of the Georgia Open Records Act. I do think we would get the board guidance that this stuff is, private. And you.
Can I respond real quick to that? I think Sherry, previously, I think Sherry may have answered that question, because while we might allow the board to come in and view documents, we would not allow them to have a copy of it, because once they have possession of it, then it becomes subject to open records, discovery through open records. So they wouldn't actually physically have a copy. They would just have information from having viewed it. And, then it would have to be kind of an honor system that they're going to keep that information confidential.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, anybody have any comments?
I have some comments. First of all, I still want to insist that this ordinance establish at the front end that the board's number one first duty is to come up with the parameters for an auditor monitor. And I feel like that should be done in that first section, section 1, before the A, before process and investigate complaints.
Yeah, I think the attorneys heard, judges heard us loud and clear on that one, right?
Okay,
I
yeah.
hear you.
I think
Yep.
it should also go in the powers and duties. The first thing in the powers and duties.
Yeah, I actually thought it might go better than the first thing, the powers and duties, to be honest with you, but as long as it's in there, right. Yep.
Also, I'm looking at membership. Ensure the board's membership reflects a diversity of age, race, socioeconomic status, gender, geographic residence, work experience, and other relevant lived experiences. I feel like we should have some qualifying or some qualifications to that. And I know that with other boards, we sometimes have like, one member must represent this community. I know like with DFACS, you have to appoint at least one member who has been a client of DFACS at one point or another, or the Board of Health, that, the school district appoints a person, and, a certain number of members have to have medical experience or be a nurse. There are like boards that are made up of certain members have to have these qualifications. And then there are members that are just drawn from the community through the regular process. I feel like we should do that with this, at least 4 or 5 of the 9 members should be clearly designated as being from certain parts of the community. And
I think we did discuss this at the last meeting, if commissioners can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the point of this and what Sherry captured was our intent of treating it like the other boards and authorities, and trying to capture those who certainly have an interest in it. And there's maybe something that could be put in here about ex officio members or something that may.
Well, I think that we could state at least one member must have significant experience in the racial justice movement. At least one member must have significant experience in the immigrant justice movement. At least one member must have significant experience in socioeconomic justice movement. There are multiple groups within this community that have active memberships that could qualify, a person to come under those categories. I think we could put our heads together and come up with, 5 categories that we could have some clear designation for membership. And then the others could be, that kind of the at-large members that go through the regular application process and don't necessarily have to have those specific qualifications.
Mr. Chair, could after my experience on this body, we have some difficulties filling vacancies on boards and authorities, and I would just feel a lot more comfortable retaining the discretion of the mayor and commission to appoint members as we see fit. I think we go down some interesting roads when we try to pre-select members for a body like this. I think I just feel a lot more comfortable if we just go through the typical application process and vet members and appoint them as we see fit.
We did discuss this a couple of times. I remember as part of the memo that we got from Sherry, the original one, was that there was heavy concern with the super specific requirements and having people appointed, because then it was going to become very difficult for us to actually meet quorum, possibly. On the ex officio, though, I did, in the document I sent out, I do make recommendations for 3 ex officios. Again, this is in line with the Atlanta model. And so I have in here, the 3 non-voting ex officio members shall be the Athens-Clarke County Attorney or their designee, the head of the ACC PD Office of Professional Standards, and the director of the ACC Department of Corrections or their designee. And if we're going to include the sheriff's department, which I also support, and it sounds like we would, then I guess I'd make a recommendation to have a fourth ex officio. That would be the Clarke County Sheriff or their designee as non-voting ex officio members.
Okay. Thank you, Tim. That's something worth considering there too. Any other comments to Attorney Drake?
Yes, Commissioner Davenport here. So I thought beginning this meeting that we would at least move forward, but it seems like we're all over the place now. But anyway, so I would like to go back to Commissioner Link's about the qualification of an auditor monitor that we set up this body, the Citizen Oversight Group, and they select the. Can you walk me through that step? So they select the auditor monitor position, or are we saying that's what they want? Because if we create this body of citizen oversight, shouldn't they decide if they want an auditor monitor or a hybrid or something different? And then if Judge Drake could explain why there needs to be community activities. I think it's already hard to get board members to participate in meetings as it is. That requiring community outreach is a little it's going to be complicated, but yeah. So those two questions.
And those are good questions, Commissioner Davenport. And I was actually thinking the same thing about the community activities, and that is certainly something that if this board, once this board gets developed, could come under their bylaws. I mean, they can decide for themselves if they what sort of requirements such as that they would like to place on them. But Commissioner, or rather, Attorney Drake, would you like to address the comments?
Well, yeah. Well, I'll take the second one first. I mean, Sherry, in her comments on here, says that y'all discussed at the August 27th, 2021 meeting, you wanted 9 members, and also she has, with respect to y'all agreed at the August meeting that you wanted to allow anyone to serve, and you weren't going to go that route. She said, agreed upon in August that anyone may apply to serve on the Police Civilian Oversight Board. That's a decision and I see she put this general language in here to make it so that try to reflect some criteria but I guess this would go through your normal reporting process like you do for a lot of the appointment process like you do now for a lot of your boards and commissions and authorities. That's a political decision you're going to have to make. I do know Atlanta does specify some positions. Atlanta's a lot bigger. I certainly either way is legally appropriate, and that's my job to give legal guidance how you set the membership. I mean, so I'm not going to try and sway that one or the other.
I'd be interested. I'd be interested in the ex officio members that Commissioner Denson alluded to.
You certainly can have that. There's never a problem with having ex officio members. And then we could add that. The next question you had about the auditor monitor Commissioner Davenport. That is again. I mean, I'm not. The approach that Commissioner Link proposes is a political decision of how this board can, if it wants to, this committee and ultimately the commission can decide to exercise a lot more authority over that and discretion of what that is going to look like if it chose to. That's the decision. I think there's pros and cons. Pro anybody would know is allowing this board that is starting to have a role in formulating, what the auditor monitor is going to look like could be viewed as very positive. The other side of the coin is maybe that takes a direction that this commission ultimately or a future commission doesn't agree with, and reining that back in sometimes can be problematic. I'm sorry, I don't have much more to offer on that, but that kind of is an overall. That is your pro and con of that.
I'm just restating what it is you're looking for that addition to this ordinance.
I mean, what I'm interested in is assuring that that auditor monitor position is baked into this ordinance up front, and that this citizen committee comes up with the initial parameters and qualifications and duties of that auditor monitor I don't know that they necessarily should be the one to choose the person.
Okay. And so what I'm hearing you say also, I think, is bake that in here, but bake into here the stipulation that that whatever they decide of those persons' duties comes back to the mayor and commission for some sort of approval. Looks like I lost everybody.
I think I still see it. We lost like half of them.
Yeah, it does.
Possibly even through this body again. But you know, and as far as like coming time to hiring that person, you know, they could also, we could come up with a clear policy for how that person would be hired, whether it's a committee that includes some folks from the oversight board, or it's the full mayor and commission, or just the mayor, or a committee appointed by the mayor, or whatever. But I think those kind of procedures have to be laid out on this front end.
Okay. Attorney Drake, would you be able to capture some of that and have something for us to look at? Maybe.
Yes, sir. I can. I think I can do that.
Figure that out. And
yep. I understand.
If we see something in writing, I think that might help. Okay, yes. Y'all. So here's what, if y'all are okay with this, here's what we'll do. We've got Commissioner Denson's suggested edits. Commissioner Denson, if you could, I believe you copied Attorney Drake on that. We'll have those up for discussion, and we may have captured some of your concerns here today. I hope we did. And Attorney Drake, if you could make the changes and additions to that ordinance, like what Commissioner Link has referred to, and some ex officio members that Commissioner Denson referred to.
Yep. So if I understand correctly, I will make the changes that have been discussed here today, and then we're going to come back next meeting. You will look at, I'll draft of that, and we'll talk about that along with reviewing Commissioner Denson's proposed additional changes that may not have been captured. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying, yes. And September 23rd, I think we need some more time to look at Commissioner Denson's language that he had there, but I'm looking, y'all, at September 23rd to come back together. It's a Thursday.
If it's just Commissioner Link's and Commissioner Denson's request, because Commissioner Denson is asking for just a small modification with, if it's, if it behooves this body, can we meet any time sooner? But if y'all feel comfortable to the 23rd, that's fine. But I think after Judd, hopefully Judd is not too overworked, but if he can get it back to us within.
Well, I'm gonna be honest with you. Sherry's gonna be working, getting back on this. So
Sherry's not
I'm always gonna help her, but we'll. Yeah.
Well, I brought up the 23rd to Commissioner Davenport simply because I would like for us to wrap this up on the 23rd and spend about maybe 45 minutes wrapping this up so we can send something along to the full mayor and commission, and then spend the next 15 or so minutes prepping us for the Parklet program. So I'm trying to signal to Josh we might need some information on what we're supposed to look at with the Parklet program so that we can move on with that discussion as well. So I'm not saying we may not get into really in-depth discussion at that meeting on the Parklet, but we're going to introduce it at least to know what we have to start thinking about. Yes, Commissioner Link.
Yeah, can someone point me in the direction of that Atlanta ordinance and where it lists the qualifications of the members?
Sure. Josh, would you mind finding or Attorney Drake, if y'all could send a link to that? If you Google it, I bet you could find it probably too.
I've got it at the bottom of my document. It has the ordinance language for Atlanta.
Okay, I'll look at it there.
And I will say, if you just Google it, it's going to pop up because yeah, you got a link. But if you need me to send a link, just send me an email, Commissioner. I'll be glad to do it.
Okay, thank you.
So September 23rd at 5 o'clock. Is that good with everybody?
Yeah.
Okay.
If I could, Commissioner Hamby, just really quick, just to try to clarify and actually save the attorney's office a little bit of work on the ask that Commissioner Link put in there. I do have some language. That's the biggest part. I think the biggest change that I'm asking for in my documents that I sent.
I saw that. You got that in there. I'll look at that.
That's basically the language pulled from the Atlanta ordinance, but then changing the wordings. They call it an executive director there.
Right.
And yeah. And just to clarify, I know Commissioner Davenport had some concerns about the needs for this stuff. I think it's helpful to know the history with the Atlanta one, that they first created this in 2007, and it was basically ineffective for 3 years. They came back and redid the ordinance because they didn't give staff the first time, and the committee went nowhere because they had no staff. And so then in 2010, they redid the ordinance, adding staff and specific staff positions into the ordinance. And since then, it's been very effective. So.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Denson.
Thank you for Commissioner Denson.
Okay. Well, y'all, if anybody else has any other business they'd like to bring up, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion to adjourn 4 minutes early.
So move.
I'm giving Commissioner Mayor Pro Tem Edwards a run for his money on keeping things going. So
Good.
we haven't decided anything yet, but we're getting there. So okay. Commissioner Lane, Commissioner Edwards, thank you for the motion and the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, Austin. Thank you, Josh,
Yeah.
Judd, and Chief for being here.
I didn't mean to. I'm sorry.